Welcome to the Boston Art Podcast,
Boston's premier art podcast,
where we talk art, culture, and philosophy.
My name is Theodore Earthworms.
And I am Brian Huntress.
Welcome to the show.
Well, that was weird. So we're back, Theo. It's been a long time.
It has. Oh my god.
We've been on a bit of a holiday hiatus.
Kinda.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, go.
I was just gonna say, to be totally transparent, that's not even the reason why, but it's fine.
Yeah,
Sometimes we just burn out.
I felt sad because I feel like there's a part of me that has had like a reverse parasocial relationship with the audience that I imagine is listening, where I'm like, I felt for like years so committed to making sure that we got the podcast out every week, every time, no matter the circumstances.
Literally years. We're coming up on 5 years.
That when
4 years? 5 years?
I think 4, maybe. I don't know. I forget. January 7th, 2021 was episode 1.
So yes, coming up on 4 years.
That's
Still.
fucked up, dog.
That is fucked up. We have a college education and Boston Art Podcast. So do you, if you've been listening from the beginning.
I met somebody the other day, as I told you, at a show. This person said they used to watch my time-lapse TikToks when they were in high school in like 2021, and now they're in college.
That's so cool.
And that is just the fucking weird. Like, it is just weird. I'm not even in a celebratory, that's cool way, but just in a reflecting on like how fucking weird that is.
And how long it's been.
I feel like just saying, like, being like excited about that doesn't really give it the proper appreciation for like just how long we've been going with this specific era. Where it's like, yeah, of course, like when you say like, you know, we were talking about like the clay heads the other night, you know, or even like looking back at like your screen printing patches days.
Yeah.
That's not even you're not even close to the same person.
That's true.
That's just like that was somebody else.
Yeah.
Right.
It's weird to think about that though, because that was a really cool tree we just drove by. Sorry, I got fully distracted by that. I was gonna say it's weird to think about that because I think, to kind of explain, to circle back to why we were actually on hiatus this month, we had a conversation recently about whether or not we've outgrown this template or what we cover, or like if we still feel like this is something we're passionate about. And I think we've come to the fact that after a few weeks of not recording, we missed it and we still want to do it. But it's interesting to think about like continuing with an art style that you like beyond the time when the person who developed it is there, if that makes sense, metaphorically. I'm not being very direct right now, but
well,
I don't know.
I think that the thing is I think there's a few things, right, where there was two competing reasons why we were doing this show.
Okay.
One was to enrich ourselves as artists and to have fun and to explore and learn in the art world.
Yeah.
And the second one was we wanted to provide value to the historical record of our community and our city.
Yeah.
So there was these two things where we're doing both simultaneously. Obviously, for anybody that's listened to even just a handful of episodes and knows us, you can tell which one of those competing goals took the lead, which is obviously, to point out, enrich ourselves as artists. And I don't mean enrich with money. I mean like enrich ourselves spiritually and mentally and with our knowledge and education and experience and socially.
Yeah.
Because there's no money, and that's not what I mean. But
well, that's where the drive comes from, right? Like, how could we have continued doing this for this long if it wasn't something that was fulfilling and exciting?
And the thing is too is that like I have no ill will or bad feelings about anyone we've interviewed. I don't have any bad feelings. Like I love and respect everybody we've interviewed.
It's actually really expanded our world, and I think we've created relationships that were really exciting we wouldn't have had otherwise. Of
course. But the thing is that like I'm also not going to pretend that it's honestly like pretty fucking difficult to interview people these days.
Yeah.
It's hard to like I find myself cynically asking the exact same questions over and over again sometimes, where it's like there are some times where I can interview somebody and I know what they're going to say. And that's an asshole way to think on my part, and I don't like my reflection.
Yeah.
With that, like if I'm like feeling cynically while interviewing somebody, feeling like I can predict what they're going to say, I'm like an asshole. There's like something I need to switch up there.
And so that's the thing. That's where the conversation, to explain to the audience, because obviously you were there, the conversation we had recently about whether or not this was still the right template or the right format, or if we're still covering the things we're passionate about, or if we need to realign. I think that's where that conversation stemmed from, because that's not, to clarify, like when we're talking about interviews being hard, it's not talking to the person that's hard or what they're saying that sucks. It's like people that we're really excited to talk to and hang out with otherwise, when it comes to recording with them, we're like, oh my god, which means it's a template problem. It's an us problem, you know? And it's not the people that we're talking to or the guests not having anything that we want to know about. It's the way that we're interacting with them doesn't feel as authentic as it used to. And I think there's a lot to chew on with that, because the beginning, the whole point when we started this was authenticity.
I think too, with every good, long-lasting show, it's supposed to, the hosts, the audience, and the show are, and for a healthy project, should all be growing together.
Right.
You know, like you don't want to be audience trapped. You don't want to be bored by your concept. And you also don't want, you also don't want the hosts to just not fucking change with the time.
Right.
Right? Like there's there's like a lot of competing things with the growth of a show that can go wrong. And I think for us, I think that we've been growing and as people, but like, you know, we used to be like, oh, we don't know anything about galleries and museums and the art world around here. It's all so mysterious. We've said this a million times. It's no longer mysterious at all.
Yeah.
It actually makes complete sense. It's very predictable. And I know a lot of people. I feel connected. And I don't know. I'm just not, it's not really a
mystery.
Yeah.
We've answered our questions, I guess.
It's kind of like when in Twin Peaks, when they, finally reveal who killed Laura Palmer, like very prematurely.
I feel like that's a completely different situation.
Well, no, I feel like that's how I feel, where the mysteries and secrets of the art world were revealed to me, and way before I thought they would be.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, so what are we still doing here with Herman fucking whatever his name is?
Herman?
No, the Dale Cooper's ex-partner or whatever.
Oh, fucking, what's his name?
I forget.
No. Wyndham Earl.
Wyndham Earl, yeah. Like I feel like we're in the Wyndham,
yes, dude.
We're in the Wyndham Earl arc
David
of
Lynch has left
our
the writing
podcast.
room of our podcast. And that's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
I think something that's been kind of difficult for me, and I've talked about this before, but you're an independent artist, so you don't report to anybody. You don't have to worry about, other than aligning with your morals, like saying too much ever. And I am not working independently. Like a lot of what I do in the art world is through an institution or working with other people. So I prefer not to talk about it on the air, because it's not just talking about me, if that makes sense. Like I just think it's not smart to do. So a lot of the exploring and learning that I've been doing, the things that I'm passionate about, are not things that I can talk about on the air unless they're not art related, which is weird. Like my art world stuff is very within a bubble, if that makes sense. And I love it. I feel very passionate about it, but I haven't had, because I've been in school too, a lot of time to, I don't think you guys want to talk about like my art history 305 classes or like, like, you know what I mean? It's just not interesting. Like the essays that I'm writing or whatever the fuck. And the work stuff I can't really talk about. So there's not a lot of time in between to talk about anything art related, because that's my art world right now.
You know what? As a mistake that we've made too, where like, I think if we were going to look at like journalism genres, this is kind of a departure from the point that you just made, actually.
That's okay.
But when you talk about journal, you know, you think there's op-eds, there's editorials, that isn't the same thing. You know, you look at these categories, like I feel like one thing that we've realized that we hate doing, that we've probably said all this before, is literally artist profile. Like this is a thing that you do. Like what are your inspirations? How did you start painting? What is your favorite color? Like this is versus like, I feel like, you know, when you're watching the news and like you're watching like, oh, there's this big trial happening with the famous criminal, like what's going to happen? We don't know what, like, oh, and now we brought in a legal expert, blah, 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 to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, and then they interview some random fucking guy who's a legal expert about his thoughts and perspectives on a relevant issue. And I feel like that's something that we need to be doing. Like, imagine if we had, I don't know, like whatever, like we interview an artist, but it isn't like, when was the first time you painted? But it was actually just like us with a prepared line of questioning about relevant, interesting topics that we are interested in.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I mean, I think there's also...
it doesn't have to be like shit that's on the news that we're like I'm not talking about like current events either.
Right.
I'm just saying like interesting conversation, but we just bring in somebody else to participate in it.
Right.
That's what I meant. That's what I'd like to do with our interviews.
I'd like that too. I think we come back to a problem with that though, where we have a lot of ideas that could be great. Like we talked about video before on the air too, and the problem with the reason we're not able to do them is because there's not enough time in the day to make it happen. Like for me, that sounds awesome, but the downtime to record, like right now, we logistically schedule recording and then we record it and it gets edited and it gets uploaded. But this is adding an extra element of also writing and like preparing the episode. Like it just seems like it would be a lot more work on the front end, which sounds great, but as far as time in the week, I don't know that I have it.
I'm not trying to say that you should either. Like I'm not.
I want to though, is the problem.
Oh, I see.
Like I could agree with you. I think that would be awesome, but
when did you start college again? When did you return?
a year ago.
So when you were gearing up to do that, and you were in the stages of, should I do it? Which college? Like, what do I? Is this worth it? Like, blah blah blah. One thing that we talked about was we knew before you even signed up for your first classes that the podcast was going to take a hit.
Yeah.
And we accepted that because you getting your degree and doing that is worth it, and it's an investment in your infinite future and career. Like, that was a requirement, and we knew that going and thrifting on the weekends or doing stupid shit every night and podcast like that was like, all right, we got to buckle down and work on some shit.
Yeah.
And that was okay. And I think we forget sometimes that we're still in that.
Yeah.
Like we forgot about that deal we made with ourselves back then. Now, like right now, we're like, oh, what happened? Oh, dude, like you don't remember when we knew that this was going to happen and we're okay with it?
Yeah.
Because that is something. And as far as the writing goes, and me, because like with that, the unspoken thing is that, oh, now me, I'll take up more responsibility to write more and all that stuff. But a bad habit that I have too, accompanied with occasionally overpromising things and committing to too much, is something that I do a lot, is that if something is wrong or something's kind of fucked up, like, oh, I have a late payment, or, oh, something's wrong with my car, I'll just be like, fuck it, and just like let it turn into a forest fire of a problem. Like I'll just be like, oh, that's stressing me out. Let's ignore it for 8 months. And then all of a sudden it's a fucking disaster.
And you're like, what the fuck? This is a disaster. I hate everyone.
Yeah, and then I fix it. And I did that when I was a kid at school. Like I just get to the end of the year and the teacher, like the guidance counselor would be like, you have all Fs. And you need to do 20 Saturday detentions in summer school or you won't pass.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, great, fine. And then I'd just do the horrible thing that was, then I'd do like the ex machina or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
Saving grace thing. And with the podcast, and the thing is, you only notice that you have that bad habit if you do it to something really bad.
Yeah.
But when you do it to something like an extracurricular podcast that you do that has like zero consequences if you fail, like you kind of don't notice.
Yeah.
Is I guess my longer point.
Well, here's another thing too that is like, actually that just brought to my mind two different points. One of which is, I kind of did that with college. Like that's kind of why I'm in the situation I'm in right now, where it was a little different, I guess, because I was always like a straight A student and I was really concerned with that, to the point where sometimes I would pull all-nighters and just be crying to make sure that I got the A, but I was doing it. And maybe that's homeschool trauma, I don't know. But I cared about it a lot. And it got to a point where right before I was supposed to graduate, like a few credits before that, I had a panic attack because I didn't know if I wanted to major in what I was majoring in, because I'd started so early, been so focused on grades, I never really did that introspection. And I just fucking dropped out. And then quarantine happened and I never went back, and it was a whole thing. And from that is how the podcast was born, because I missed that influx of education. Like I'd been so used to being in classes all the time and being around artists and being in this like academic kind of space that when I was quarantined and I was just in my apartment, like hanging out with my roommates, like drinking, it was like horrible intellectually and probably health wise, but I stopped that quickly. But that's part of why the podcast became a thing, because I met you because we met because I posted on Facebook that I wanted to watch documentaries with somebody, like talk about them. That's when we started talking, and then we made the podcast out of the conversations that were happening then. So it was this long road that kind of brought me to where I am now, but it's a weird place to be returning to school, because I feel like, maybe this is like a dark way to think about it, but I feel like it's so split up, like culturally and socially, like people that go to college and people that don't, that when you dropped out and then return, you're like an in-between, where when you talk to some people that didn't go to college or that did community college and didn't do 4-year or whatever, like the fact that you're going at all is great and it's impressive. But when you talk to people that are in school or people that are your peers, they all graduated when they were like 21, and it's like they're nice about it, but it's embarrassing that you're going back at 27. So it's very strange, because I feel like there's not a lot of people that I can relate to on that. And it's put me in a really weird limbo where now the things that I want to be doing, like the podcast wouldn't have happened if I hadn't left school for me, but I would be so much more free to do the podcast if I weren't in school now and had finished before, which is just such a weird catch-21, I guess. Catch-22. But
Yeah, I think it's 22.
But then again, the other thing I was going to say is that for you, like we're talking about me and my availability in school and stuff, and like that's a strict thing that's not my deadlines that I'm setting. But talking about managing life stuff and like making sure that you're getting things done on time, like you also have a very, like, even recently, blossoming career that...
Oh, thanks.
I mean, it's true, though. I'm not even just saying that to be complimentary. Like, it's completely changed in the last year, the time demands that it has on you. And you need to be putting in that time and that investment into things that are paying off, that you're building. And I think, I'm not to say the podcast isn't that, but expecting you to do all of that front-end work, to be writing full episodes because you have more time, is not really realistic to the situation. Like, you don't have more time than me, you know? So I think simultaneously, yes, what we're doing needs to change to stay updated with us, but I'm also not suggesting what that could be, but maybe saying that adding more work on our plates, like doing video and you doing video editing, or us writing the episodes and you writing all of them, I don't think that's realistic, because you need to be focusing on your music and your art. Like, where are you going to get that time from?
This sucks so bad.
I know.
What are we doing?
Well, what I had suggested, that I don't know if this is right or not, but I think that maybe fuck the art podcast. Maybe it should be Whatever We Want podcast, and we cover literally anything, not just like creatively suggesting that someone's an artist when they're a mechanic. You know what I mean? Yeah,
this is already a thing that we've discussed too, and we're like, yeah, we'll have to think about that, and then we just didn't think about it until this very moment.
Like, I think that if we expand and just cover whatever we think is interesting, then we're still following that flame, and it won't be like, how did you get into this? Like, what school did you go to? Blah, blah, blah. Have you always been in Boston? Like, those questions are interesting if you're interested. But if we're just asking them on a template, that was never the original plan.
Yeah. And I also want to say for both of us too, that there is every interview that we've done, even recently, we have loved and enjoyed, and it was awesome.
Yes. This is an us problem, not anybody
highly
else.
Hypothetical.
Yes. Yeah. But I mean, yeah. The problem is we were following our curiosity with the people we've interviewed. Like, we really love everyone that we've talked to, and we wouldn't take the time to do an unpaid hour-long interview with somebody that we didn't like. Like, everybody that we've talked to, it's been a blessing to be able to talk to them that way and to have these extended conversations. But what's changed is we went from doing free-form conversations that are just unedited, whatever, that's like our whole thing, to having stock questions, to having a template, to forcing yourself into a conversation that you're not as invested in as if you just asked what you were curious about, because of a dedication to an audience. But nobody asked us to do that, you know?
Yeah, definitely not. And the most consistent feedback we've ever gotten about the podcast is that people like the ones that aren't interviews more.
Yeah.
You know what was? Yeah, it is true that I'm just kind of. You know what's? Let me pitch this to you.
Okay.
Even though it's December and I'm running out of time to do this.
Next year is always an opportunity.
Well, I really want to approach this like almost like I know fashion designers do this, where a fashion designer spends a year basically, or a period of time. Like if we were entering 2025 in a design era, we would be designing for 2026. We'd be creating a fall line for 2026, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
And then during 2026, we'd be promoting and selling all that shit while making all the shit for 2027.
Right.
And I kind of want to approach the podcast in a similar way, where imagine if we planned out like a big episode a month for the entire year. Like we just slated a bunch of shit like now for 2025, and then made all the shit on time, and then in between all those made shit like this, where we pre-program like a year of evergreen shit that's about things that interest us, and then in the middle record like we are now, either with just us or with another person.
That could be a good idea.
Like, I don't know. Like, imagine if we just literally had a calendar where we knew the whole year, like, oh, in March, we're going to do something, whatever. I don't know.
I like that idea. I think what's important is...
But I guess what I'm asking, do you think that is an absurd goal? Like, to try to, like, do you think that will be, like, way too much work in and of itself?
Actually, no, because I think all of the work would be at one time.
Yeah.
And then the rest would be recording on a whim, as we have been. But I do think one caveat that I have with that is that if we do an interview with someone, it doesn't come out for a year, that might be a bummer for them.
Oh, no. I don't want the stuff that we plan a year in advance to be interviews. Like, for example, the Andy Warhol episode would have been perfect for this.
I see.
All of those ones where they were like these...
Truly evergreen, like history stuff or something.
Yeah, more significant planned things with a little bit of research and just shit involved.
But what if we record it and we have like dumbass opinions on it, and then a year later we air it and we're like, ugh.
Fuck it.
Ugh.
Who gives a shite?
No, I like that idea. Because the thing is, we also talked about releasing less often, which I don't love, but maybe.
We floated the potential of 2 episodes a month, which is like maybe not.
That's the difference between 52 episodes and 24.
Something that I like that a lot of YouTubers will do is like video essayists, for example, where they will, the difference between a video essayist and a YouTuber would be the YouTubers just putting out vlogs and any given kind of funny video content all the time, weekly, multiple times a week, versus a video essay person spends like maybe multiple months making like a 3-hour long, really significant piece.
Yeah.
They'll release those like once a month, and people anticipate them and know they're putting in work. So I think it's also about expectations set by us as well, where
like what kind of content are we sending out?
Yeah, right now we're in the YouTuber category where most of the time we're not putting in a high amount of effort. We're doing kind of dispatch more timely things.
Yeah. And
that's cool. That's a vibe. It's fun. But I think that if we were to reduce the frequency of hosting, it would come with, I think it would be also about it wouldn't be us doing an episode like this once a month.
Right.
That would feel kind of like wasteful.
So maybe what we could do once a month is the scripted episodes.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
So we could script 12?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And make them kind of like far in advance.
I like that, actually.
And then just like move on with our lives. And another thing too that's an important business item to discuss that sucks, that is very stressful to me, is our horrible piece of shit podcast distributor fucking removed the ability to distribute the podcast to YouTube.
I forgot about that.
What a fucking nightmare situation.
So I have a question though.
It stresses me out so badly.
We have the MP3s, so could we just like put a photo on it and put it in like
iMovie? But our podcast episodes, when you export them as a video, are like 5 gigabyte files. They're like massive fucking video files that take so long to export and upload, and it's like a whole nother long ass pain in the ass process.
Doesn't YouTube cut them up like when we uploaded episodes before?
It did that for like fucking 10 episodes and then just magically stopped doing that for no reason.
And then they just removed the feature altogether.
And then like a few months ago, they got rid of the feature completely.
Fuck you, Spreaker.
So our YouTube is missing like 5 episodes.
That's actually really
Or
aggravating.
no, maybe like 2 or 3.
We have a lot of YouTube listeners, though.
We have a chunk. We have like a little bit of listeners on every platform.
This is like a sidebar, but we found this out recently that we had been looking at stats for like the last 4 years of just one platform, and we actually have listeners, like the same amount of listeners on like 3 other platforms. So we have like 4 times the amount of listenership that we thought we did.
Unless you weirdos are like, you listen to the episode on Spotify
and then listen to it
and
again.
then you listen to it on an Apple podcast, and then you listen to it on YouTube because you're like a sicko or something.
Yeah, cut that shit out if you're doing it. It's confusing us. But no, we have like a lot more listeners than we thought we did, which is really exciting, but also.
And we also don't really. So, yeah.
Kind of. Maybe that's part of why we had this little meltdown.
What is feeling like nobody's listening?
No, realizing that people were listening. So I think it was around the same time.
Yeah, and I'm just a big believer too that why would people? I have been a fan of content creators in the past who seemed like they gave up or seemed like they didn't really care or weren't really invested or kind of didn't give a shit about their audience. And it made me I ended up being kind of repulsed.
Yeah.
Where I was like, oh, now I feel like embarrassed for liking this because this guy's an asshole and doesn't even care or isn't taking it seriously or is kind of ungrateful.
Yeah.
That I can list off a bunch of creators that I kind of ended up feeling that way about and just being like, I don't want to fucking be like that. That's like the most whack you can ever be.
Well, I don't think that it's ever been like that for us. Like, we've always really loved doing this. I think the only part that's been difficult is that this has been literally coming up on 4 years of doing this every single week. Like, that's a lot. Think about how many hours we put into doing this. Not to mention how many episodes we've tried to record and that just wasn't working, so we scrapped them. Like, we release like an hour and a half every week, which means we're recording an hour and a half every week. But then there's also, if it's an interview, there's an hour drive there, an hour drive home. That's 3.5 hours. Maybe we tried to record an episode together. We didn't like it, so there was like 45 minutes wasted. Then we tried again. That was an hour and a half. Like, this is like a part-time job for real. And working that into your daily routine takes some maneuvering. That doesn't mean that we don't love doing it. We wouldn't be doing it if it weren't for that.
Yep.
And I kind of feel like, I don't know, in the past, I've not really liked doing meta episodes. And I feel like that's still true to a degree. Like, I don't want to just talk about the podcast on the podcast forever. But I think it's good to talk about this stuff because this is very applicable to the way people practice their art. Like, you have to set aside time to do what you love, even if you're not getting paid for it, if it's not, like, convenient. Like, those things don't really matter in the sense of,
Sorry, I got a notification that I was curious about.
A text during my point?
Yes, I was reading a text during your point. Sorry about that.
I'm just saying you have to figure out a way to make your discipline a discipline. And I think that's what we're struggling with right now.
Yeah, that is an operative word in that word.
Yeah.
Like, people often forget, like, oh, like, that's, like, yeah. Like, that's the thing about a discipline is that
you got to do it every day.
Yeah, sometimes you don't fucking want to.
Yeah.
And
that's the thing. Like, when we complain about the podcast, I'm fully aware that we've been bitching and moaning this whole episode.
We're not.
We're not. That's what I'm saying. Like, whatever works for you to make your creative practice work into your life isn't going to stay working for you forever. Your life changes, your demands and your time change, what you want to do changes, what you're covering and passionate about changes, and that's what we're working through right now.
Yeah.
And if the answer is that we just need to expand what we report on, then that's more exciting to me than cutting back. I'd rather continue releasing weekly and just cover whatever we want than only report on art and release twice a month. Not that I want to stop reporting on art, but I think there's other things we're passionate about too.
I think it's also about it. I think for me, like, I think it's about permanently redefining what the point of the show is, which is kind of a stupid thing to try to define because if we had, like, no one person would listen to a podcast for the same reasons, right?
Yeah.
Like, there are people that listen to a podcast to clean. There are people that fall asleep to podcasts. There are people that listen to them while they work for artistic enrichment. Like, there's a million reasons why. So it kind of doesn't even matter why we think we're doing it and that's just to preface what I'm about to say,
Right.
which is I feel like our point, we are going back to our original two ideas, which were one, as some kind of, we wanted to provide some kind of historical context to the art community for right now.
Right.
And we wanted to enrich ourselves artistically and knowledge wise.
Right.
And those two goals are boring as fuck. Not gonna lie, dude. Like, I respect librarians, local historians, and people that want to benefit their community through information and journalism and data, but I'm not fucking one of them anymore. I'm done. I don't give a fuck.
I still like those goals.
Well,
but
I like those goals, and I support and endorse everybody who's doing that.
those goals are dumb as fuck.
But no, I'm done, dude. I don't fucking care. It's over for me. Where I'm not a librarian. No one's ever gonna fucking pay me to do anything, to preserve anything.
Yeah.
It's never gonna fucking help me to do that. So me, like, dedicating all of this stress and mental space to being like, oh, but I have to benefit. We made the Boston Art Podcast, so we need to live up to, like, no. If you're mad that we named our podcast that, you can go fuck yourself.
Remember when we were talking about how sometimes you make a point that's completely accurate and fine in the most abrasive possible way? I think you might be doing that right now. Fuck you if you want us to be art podcasters. Fuck you.
I just think this idea that we used to have where we felt like we were almost doing a civic duty.
Yeah.
We need to fucking fully expel that from our minds. Because even if we dedicated all of the time in the fucking world to doing that, it would be a drop in the bucket. And there's people with way more resources than us that are getting paid to do this that are doing it. Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, there are people with way more power and resources that have the same goal that are already on it.
I half agree with that. I still think that it's true that what we're doing is something that not a lot of other people are doing. I think that artists that aren't already, like, represented, like, blue chip artists, they're not being covered by those platforms, at least here. And I do think that that's still important, but I also agree we don't have the resources, we don't have the time. If we're coming up against it being a difficult roadblock to try to write episodes, like, it is a drop in the bucket. There's too many people out there. But that's why I think it's important for us to continue covering things we're passionate about. And that will include artists. We both care about that deeply. But it might also include something completely random. Like, it might include tradesmen. It might include, like, gossiping with our grandparents. These are both ideas we've had recently. And I think that we should continue to cover what we're excited about instead of trying to hold ourselves to an altruistic goal that we're not capable of accomplishing with the resources we currently have, and nobody's really holding us to.
Yeah, so fuck that.
All right, yeah.
Fuck the library.
All right, chill. We love the library.
Earth.
Stop! Oh my god. You're
yeah.
fucked.
So,
hey, you have a show tonight.
Hold on. We're not. What are we gonna do? Plug the show?
No, I just want to talk about it.
The episode's gonna come out in a week.
I just wanted to talk about it.
We'll talk about that later. I'm still thinking about this idea. Like, I think if we were to pick a specific idea, that the purpose for this, it is literally, like, I think the point, like the pitch, right, is just a. Now I feel like I'm making a bad point.
What were you gonna say?
Like, that this is just a podcast for artists.
Yeah.
That artists can enjoy and listen to doing whatever the fuck they want. And if you're not an artist and you like it, fuck it, that's cool too.
I would even expand that to say it's just a podcast for creatives. Which is why I kind of like the idea of expanding on just art. And I know we've covered some interviews with musicians. We haven't really done a ton of them, but some music stuff, because that's an art also. We've done some stuff with, like, I don't know, we've expanded a little bit, but I want to maybe even abandon the adjective or buzzword of art, and I want to just expand on anything creative, anything interesting, anybody doing anything that's sincerely strange. And I think when we were reporting in that way, like, that has been a goal of ours before, and we kind of abandoned it because we wanted to get serious. And I think that was good, and it served us, and we got to have some really cool conversations, and I don't want to give up on doing that. If we get another opportunity to talk to somebody who's more established, I'm happy to do that. I welcome that. But I want to continue talking to people that aren't. And I want to cover things that are just interesting to us, because I think the problem is that we've lost our passion for it. Maybe not lost it, but it's become different.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, if you think about it as an artist too, what fuels you? Like what experiences do we have as artists that make us want to go make art, that enrich us, that make us want to be creative and get out there, right? For me, it's if I go to a fucking really amazing show and see an amazing performance and great music, that makes me want to go make shit. Like if I watch some like weird documentary about like the fucking pyramids and shit
Yeah.
and like ancient Egypt, I'm like, whoa, what the fuck? Now I'm thinking about all kinds of weird esoteric shit and I might go make art. Like if I watch some like absolutely fucking amazing Tiny Desk concert from a band that I've never even heard of,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to write some music.
Yeah.
Versus like I'm not like watching a fucking dialogue of two people sitting on a chair on a soundstage in an auditorium in a museum talking about like the state of museums.
See,
or watching an artist profile from like Wall Street Journal about some random guy in New York.
Yeah.
I'm not like watching that and going like, okay, cool. I feel so great now. I'm going to go.
And I mean, I feel like those things do inspire me when the person we're talking to or when the interviewer is asking really interesting questions. But if it's just a background on that artist, I feel like the use for that media is to learn more about that specific person, which is good. It's not a bad thing, but it's not. I think what you're talking about here is like we used to intentionally make content that was inspiring to us, and not in the way that it's like, oh, it's inspiring like hopecore, but like it actually inspired you to be creative. It gives you that itch. And I don't think that maybe we haven't had the time to look for that recently.
Yeah, it's like and I think that we used to find that through other people because we felt like we felt very isolated and disconnected from people and community.
Yeah.
Because this came out of COVID.
Yeah.
This was a COVID project essentially where we were anywhere we went, we were completely isolated.
Yeah.
Alone, wearing masks, being next to other people was fucking weird.
Yeah.
And when we started doing this, we're like visiting random people that we didn't even have any idea that this type of person existed. And now we're just in their space talking to them after like being isolated weirdos with no social connection for multiple years.
Yeah.
It was massively energizing. Like to be around, like even if we didn't even like the person or even if it was a terrible interview, we were like always so energized from it in like a very major, like in like a spiritual way. And now
we were grateful for it.
Yeah, we were really grateful. And I think that COVID is a really important piece of context that we're often forgetting, which is we started doing this in a time where a very meaningful long conversation with a person in person became an extremely scarce thing that was gone. It was something torn away from everybody.
And maybe that's something that played into it too. Is like, I think what we were talking about earlier is that a lot of these conversations were so meaningful, and it was easy to stumble across meaning when we were talking to people. They were very open about, like, they just wanted to have a long and deep conversation. And I think that part of that absolutely was the people we were talking to. They're very interesting, wonderful people. But maybe that's part of the reason why it's been hard to get to that meet recently, because it's not as uncommon to have an hour-long conversation about your work, especially if you're a working artist. It's probably not the only interview you've ever done.
Yeah.
Like, if we're pitching it as we're doing artist profiles, that's not special or meaningful. It might be if you never had one before, and I love when that happens, but if it's somebody who's a professional, they've been doing this for a while, like, I don't know, you have artist profiles before. If you were approached by somebody that was like, hi, I'm a journalist, I want to do a profile on your art, you'd be like, here's what I do, here's the school I went to, whatever the fuck, blah, 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 and this is what I'm into, this is my next show, bye. Like, it wouldn't be like, I started getting into art because my mom, like, taught me this thing, like, not this deep, meaningful conversation, which we used to be so spoiled by. And we're seeking that, but not pitching that. Like, we're not leading with, like, hey, I want to talk to you for an hour and a half about something you care about deeply. We're leading with, hey, it's the Boston Art Podcast. You know? I think that's the problem. I think it's the template. I think it's the branding. And
I think, yeah, the gratitude aspect is definitely, like, a tough thing to it's a little bit of a tough thing to realize. Like, yeah, we're being kind of shitty. Well, I think
honestly.
I forgot what I was experiencing when we loved this so much, which
Mm.
was very like deep loneliness and isolation from the world. And also you got to think too, like, remember that spirit of unity and love and connectiveness that everybody felt, where nobody was sure if you could shake somebody's hand,
Mhm.
or like there was just so much, and everybody that you saw and everybody that you joined in with, like, to go to a thing or do that, like, it meant so much at that time.
Yeah.
Versus now we've all returned to this like blackened heart, like we've, that spirit of love and unity that we had coming out of COVID is gone.
And the other thing too is not even just that, but it's been 5 years. There are adults now in Boston that didn't experience that as an adult.
Yeah,
Like, not everybody had that experience.
we're old.
Well, chill on that, but I don't know. I think that
I'm old.
you're old. I'm not. I think that yeah. This is like a weird statement to make, maybe, and it might not have enough context that people don't really know what I do. But I guess saying this to you, I think that I also experience kind of an isolation with art where I'm in a very academic, artistic setting so often that I feel like I am still hungry for those conversations with people that are artists or like do this all the time or like that's their thing, because I'm very much around people that are adjacent, if that makes sense. And I'm kind of adjacent, like what I do every day. Are you?
Can you check the light on your mic real quick?
It's on. Is it
Okay,
working?
good.
Okay.
No, you're good. Yeah, sorry. I got concerned that your mic wasn't on.
It's okay. I appreciate that.
Sorry
Do you want me
to-
to restate what I was
Sure, yeah, sorry to interrupt your flow state.
It's okay. Truce.
Love you, truce.
Love you. I was gonna say that I feel like I'm experiencing a kind of isolation where I guess it's not isolation, but I'm very pro-social. I have a lot of friends. I see people every single day. I talk to people every single day. But the percentage of those people that are working artists has changed drastically since before the pandemic, where that was like everybody I was interacting with before. And now I have a job that is arts adjacent and what I work on all the time and like school and everything. Like I'm in more of like an art history kind of setting, which is very interesting and I love it so much. But those conversations of like randomly talking to somebody going to their studio, like I have this thought in my head that I'm around the arts all the time, but I'm not. Like those are still pretty rare to me. And I think maybe the reason why it feels so redundant to do this like art historian kind of slant is like that's my work, that's my school, that's my free time. Like everything is like where were you born, what school did you go to, what year was it when you started doing this, what phase of your art are you in now. Like it's all so analytical, and that like tactile kind of like just going and seeing what somebody's doing, smelling their studio, feeling their work. Like you're doing textile, what kind of textile are you doing, where did you get that stuff, that's so interesting. Like that passion is not something that I have all the time, and I think it makes it feel so, I guess, gray to talk to somebody who's doing something really fucking cool and then to use this template where I make it the same again. It's like making things dull.
You know what? I wonder if this is a good technical approach for us to be. Is I wonder if we could make a list of banned questions.
That might be interesting.
Because that is a very interesting point you're bringing up, that I think we used to just follow the thread of curiosity in the conversations, but because we were inexperienced interviewers, we were just like asking whatever the first thing that popped into our head was
Yeah.
about whatever was in front of us. But I feel like sometimes, like for me in my mind, sometimes I feel like I try to take too much control over the narrative almost, where I, as like an interviewer, start to form a narrative with my questions around the person. And you know what I'm saying? Where I almost feel like I lead the question sometimes.
Yeah.
Where I'm trying to get the person to say something. Because
Yeah.
I'm like looking for a story almost in them versus just letting it be whatever it is naturally.
Yeah.
Like, and we used to do that. And like I feel like maybe it's definitely a bad habit. Like,
Well,
for example, I think we should no more asking about mentors.
why? I love that question.
I love that too, but maybe that can stay. Or maybe no more asking about school.
I think that it might not be the questions. I think it's the energy. Like I think what you just said about leading a story or like trying to get a story out of someone.
Yeah.
that is so antithetical to what we set out to do. And I think that it at times is true. And I think I know where that came from. Like, in the beginning, we did have so many raw and interesting experiences and stories, but we used to leave interviews being like, oh fuck, I wish I asked this. Like, I feel like I didn't ask this, and it would have been really great for the audience if they got to know this. Or I really wonder this about this person, and I don't have a chance to ask them again. Like, I fucked it up not being able to say it on the air. Or sometimes, maybe this is just my inner thoughts, because I actually can't think of a specific experience that I think we aired where this happened, but there was so much anxiety for both of us, or for me anyway, of talking to somebody and not knowing what to say, and it getting awkward because we did a bad job. Like, we felt very aware of the fact that we were inexperienced, and even though there was some like awesome magic to that I think we didn't feel like worthy of the conversation sometimes. I think that's why we started seeking out questions. Like, they started becoming stock questions so that we wouldn't have those lulls. But I think those pauses where nobody was saying anything, so they were thinking about what someone said, or asking someone a question they weren't expecting and they thought it was kind of weird, but they didn't have a prepared answer for it, so they tell the truth. Like, that kind of moment, we isolated ourselves from because of fear of awkwardness or tension or overstepping or something. Which, like, obviously we want the guest to feel comfortable. Like, if we asked them something they didn't want to answer, we would just cut it, which we had done. But
when they ask.
Well, what we started doing that I think is still good is telling people in the beginning, if there's something you don't want us to talk about or you want to cut something, let us know when it happens and we'll cut it. And I think that's been very helpful. But I think having stock questions to prevent awkwardness was a bad move.
Yeah, like Louis Theroux is like an excellent fucking interviewer if you've ever watched his stuff. He's like that. He's like he's like an elf-like British guy who like has glasses.
Okay.
And he like, his like, the thing with him is that he said this in interviews before, that he like can withstand like any amount of awkwardness. Like he will just sit in the pool of like the weirdest, most fucking horrible, tense, weird. Like, he has documentaries where he spent like a year hanging out with like a neo-Nazi gang.
Yeah.
Like, just living with them, hanging out with them.
That's nuts.
Or like the Westboro Baptist Church, and he just doesn't. He's like immune to weirdness.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm not at all. I like I will detect awkwardness and like run. Yeah. Like, I like immediately I'm like, okay, whoa, we're hitting a weird point. Let's back it up. Let's get the fuck out of that feeling.
Me too. And I think that's a problem. Because you know what? This is kind of like a weird comparison maybe, but have you ever had an experience where you had a family member, a really close friend that you used to be extremely close with, and it was just natural, and you didn't see each other for a while, and then you saw them again and you were very excited to see them, but you didn't talk about anything real, and you had a conversation, maybe a couple hours, you hung out with them, but nothing happened in a way? Like, it was like you were behind a wall because you didn't have that connectedness that you were expecting to have.
That's a sad thought, but yes.
I think that that's happening to us because of us. Because in that example, the reason that would happen is because both of you are afraid of rejection and you're closed off. And I think that's happening in a weird way. This is very abstract, but do you know what I mean?
I do.
Like, I think we're interviewing that way. Like, a fear of rejection is leading instead of just an authenticity and openness.
Interesting, yeah. I guess we'll have to...
You know what we used to do a lot, too? That was kind of me being, like, a weirdo about this, but we used to talk about psychology a lot as well. And we used to talk about, like, connectedness and earnestness and honesty. And, like, I remember I did a reading of a, like, relationship therapy book on here, and we were talking about how that relates to us and interviewing and whatever. We dropped that. We stopped thinking about... Like, we were so person-centric and authenticity-centric, and I think we've kind of streamlined this into, like, a business. Yeah. And it sucks because it wasn't a part-time job before. It is a part-time job now because of the way we approach it. Because we took the, like, vulnerability out of it.
You know what's something that I was thinking about earlier, a point I was going to make, but I forgot that you just reminded me of, is we also started this podcast as, like, pre-2020 people. Like, we were not involved in the content space. The idea of going viral wasn't on our minds.
Yeah.
The idea of being famous on the internet, like, that was not anything we had considered. Well, of course we'd considered it, but that wasn't in the realm of possibility. And I feel like during the course of this podcast's existence, we became very aware of what it means to go viral.
Yeah, it happened to you.
What that is, what that entails. Can you engineer it?
Yeah.
And like I feel like that's such a sad thought. I wonder if that's like
This became content.
this became like a content situation.
Wow.
That's kind of interesting to think about, because I kind of think of my life a lot in these two separate phases a lot, where pre-2020, it was a very analog era where I was just always live performances, in person, face to face, hyper local audience, hyper local everything.
Yeah.
And now I'm the complete opposite. And that feel like started from COVID, where I was in the situation where I had a lot of huge beef and personal problems with my community and people I used to be friends with that I fucking hated. And it was like a lot of problems like that. So I was super alienated from my old community and music scene. And I was like, fuck them. I don't want to help them anymore. And then second, you couldn't even be in this 6 feet away from a person in line at 7-Eleven to buy a fucking bag of chips or something.
Yeah.
Like, so, and then where do you go when you're a person that's like obsessed with attention and performance and art? And now all of a sudden that's all gone.
Yeah. That was hard.
You're on TikTok making a fool of yourself, or you're fucking trying to go viral on YouTube Shorts. I think, yeah, I don't know. Like,
that's really interesting.
Yeah. And I wonder, perhaps this podcast shouldn't be a vehicle of virality, of trying to establish an audience. Perhaps it should be a reprieve from that, as it once was. It used to be kind of an escape from that.
Because that wasn't, even when we were talking about, like, we really wanted to be out there and to talk to people, to have this experience we'd had pre-pandemic, that we weren't looking for an audience. We were looking for connection.
Yeah. Fuck.
That's so interesting.
That sucks.
I haven't considered how different the landscape is. Because I don't know, maybe I'm going to sound old as fuck when I talk about this, because I know they're doing like throwback TikToks about this now. But the 2010s, the internet was not, maybe towards the end it was, but the internet was not a place where you went to get famous. It was a place to express yourself and to talk to your friends.
Yeah.
And that's not really what it is now. Like, I feel like everybody has like a ghost profile, or they have like an Instagram where they just look hot. Like, it's all about how people see you. And it kind of was that before. Like, I mean, I used to curate my Instagram feed in 2016 too, but it was for my friends. It was so that I looked cool. It was like marketing myself to people I knew, not like expecting that 700,000 people are listening to everything you say and maybe will cancel you, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that has been, I mean, not to say that has been a fear, because it's not like a leading thing, but you are very self-aware when you're online, especially with a podcast. Like, I think we have talked about like our words taken out of context, or like something we said 3 years ago that we don't stand by now, that we just think is stupid, or like a bad view on an artist that we now like, or something like that. And I just like, I don't know, I feel like maybe that's true, that we haven't noticed that the platform has changed and that we've changed in response. And that's what we miss, is the openness and the earnestness.
And I think I used to be way more charitable to other artists and stuff too, where especially after like I was like, you know, after like my rage bait psychopath on TikTok era.
That was so bad.
I think that really fucked up my mental landscape.
Yeah.
Where I think that kind of made me put my guard up, and I think I became like anti-vulnerable after that in a lot of ways. Where now, you know, we've had like tiffs and weird moments, and not me and you, but like with other people regarding to the podcast, revolving around it, where we're like, oh, this person probably fucking hates us, or like, oh, that like we've often had like weird like unspoken fucked up things with people.
Not often. It's been a couple times.
I mean, maybe not often, but over the years, like there has been a lot of like weirdness, or being like, oh, this person's probably just like a jealous bitch, or like a piece of shit. Like, that's how I think now. That really is how I think. I'm a very,
I know.
I think I'm like, and I don't, maybe I'm making shit up, but like, maybe I've been like this the entire time, but I feel like at the beginning, I feel like I wasn't this cynical and negative.
Yeah.
And like, I think a lot of the times I see the worst. I definitely sometimes will see the worst part of somebody before I see with them for the good that they can provide, and with the good in them. Like, and I'll just see what I want to see.
That's interesting.
I'll just see the shittiness that I'm looking for. which is whack because that's like the most anti-community, anti-human thing. But
I think that there's a lot that I could say about that. Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to go in on you right now.
It's okay. I just am wondering if I'm like, maybe I'm creating like a fake dichotomy, like this like non-existent before and after line. But I'm kind of wondering if like, I think maybe like more humility, generosity, and charitability involved in approaching this and not doing anything ever. No engagements, no interviews, no connections, unless it actually is in the spirit of real meaningful connection.
Yeah.
Not like because we used to have this problem where we'd be like, oh, this is a cool opportunity and this person's like significant or like has really cool connections or they're popular, but we didn't feel passionate about interviewing them.
Yeah.
But we did it anyway because we felt like, oh, this is a good get. And like that was like, I don't know, I wouldn't take any of it back, but I'm also like, maybe that was bad.
I mean, yes and no, because the thing is, I think there were some instances where, and again, while you're saying this, I'm trying to think of who we're talking about, and I know that this happened, but I don't even know who we were referring to, so maybe this is a good example of how our opinions have changed, but I think there are some people that we were afraid to interview, or we weren't passionate about interviewing them, but we knew a lot of people liked them, we didn't really get it, and then we talked to them, and we got it. We're like, you know what, that was awesome, I learned a lot from talking to them, and I was being judgmental by not wanting to interview them for some reason. Like, maybe I thought that they wouldn't like me, maybe I didn't understand their work, but I went for it anyway. So I think that it's been good that we've been kind of challenging our biases, but because I can't honestly think of a single instance that we've aired of interviewing somebody that we thought was not going to be great to interview, and then they actually weren't. Like, I think generally if somebody is like really off-putting and we don't like them as a person, like we just don't talk to them. But there have been some cases where nobody that we've aired is somebody we have beef with, to be totally transparent. Like, there's never been a case where we've interviewed somebody who was a good interview and then we talk shit after. We don't do that. To clear the air right now. But I think that there have been times where somebody's really popular, so we're like, they're not going to want to talk to us. Like, if we interview them, like, they're going to not like us or they're going to ignore us, you know? And then we talk to that person, that wasn't the case. Like, I think there's some insecurity in putting yourself out there to be like, do you want to talk to me for an hour and a half?
Yeah.
But yeah, this is really interesting what we've identified about being guarded, because I hadn't really thought about that, but I think that's really true. I think for me, it's less like thinking that people are like too good for us, that they're jerks or something, but it's more of like, I have this constant paranoia of like the Eye of Sauron. Like, I think that I'm going to say something that's the wrong thing and I'm going to lose everything that I've worked for, which I know I've had that happen to me before, not because I said something, but just getting laid off and then falling into the pits of poverty. And I have this really impending fear of winding up poor again. And I'm not like making a ton of money or anything right now, but I'm at a stasis, and I'm very protective of that. And sometimes I'm so afraid that I'm going to lose that, even if I'm not doing anything wrong. Like, I don't think I've ever said anything that would get me fired, but I'm so afraid that would happen that sometimes I don't put my art out there, or I don't say what I really feel, or I don't write episodes because I don't want to say anything wrong. And that's something that I need to challenge, because I think that's a trauma thing more than anything. The podcast has propelled me in my career. Like, the people around me, work-wise and school-wise, are glad that I'm doing it, and I've only heard positive feedback, but I'm still so afraid because it's so vulnerable that I'm going to say something that will come off wrong, or I'll accidentally make it sound like I think something I don't think, or I'll offend somebody when I don't want to. I just have this constant fear of like hurting people or hurting myself by being too out there. And I think that at its root is like an insecurity, I guess. Like, there's a belief that there's something down there that I don't know about that's going to make me so bad publicly that nobody will like me anymore. And to be transparent, I've always felt that way. Our first episode is me and Brian fighting about whether or not we should have a podcast. But I think in a weird way for me, it's less artistic insecurity and more like I think that it's independence and like income trauma, if that makes sense.
I see that. Yeah. This might be slightly unrelated, but I've been watching the music reviewer guy Anthony Fantano a little bit recently, and one thing he says a lot in interviews is this phrase "return to form."
Interesting.
Where he'll be talking about an artist and he'll be like, like, this is really great, like debut album, a return to form for this, like, and I was thinking about that phrase, return to form, and he was using it positively. This idea that an artist gets really popular for like a really specific vibe with specific instruments and specific sound and vocal styles and lyrics, and people fall in love with that, and then they deviate from it with flops for so long, and then people celebrate them and love them when they go back.
The return to form.
Yeah, like imagine if Billie Eilish came out with like her first album. Like imagine if she just dropped some shit like that again.
I would love that.
With all the right, exactly. Like with all those same like weird, like black goo dripping from her mouth, like with the weird fucking creepy lyrics.
Yeah.
And like bisexual, mentally ill shit or whatever. Like people like, and that's like, I've been thinking about that a lot because my instinct as a songwriter is I want to just make weird, crazy shit all the time that excites me. Like I want to make a song that doesn't sound like anything I've ever made.
Yeah.
But the market wants the opposite in a sense. And I feel very hurt and disillusioned when the weird, stupid shit I made doesn't stick.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. This is like I'm actually going in a lot of different directions. But I guess what I was just going to say is like, I wonder if there is some magic in the idea of a return to form. Where like, I wonder if maybe like we could try to do some of this podcast again where we try to embody
the way we used to be.
Yeah, the spirit of our old selves with that same kind, like we were bright-eyed and bushy-tailed in a lot of ways, and we didn't know a lot, and
a lot younger too.
Yeah, and I think maybe I just don't want to admit it, but yeah, I suppose we were younger.
I was 23.
How old was I then? 25?
4 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
29.
I must have been about to turn 24. I think I was 23, about to turn 24.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, but no, if it was January. Oh, no, I was 24 in January of 2021.
Okay.
Right?
So that means I was like, maybe had just turned 26.
I think you were 25.
Whatever. I don't fucking know. But I just think that, like, I wonder if, like, I don't know. I think for me, I don't, maybe the answer, maybe there's not one answer for both of us. Maybe there's two answers.
That's a good point.
Maybe we're both going to have our own kind of illuminating thing where I think that I need to just, I think my pettiness and cynical thoughts about other artists and myself and the world is not doing me any favors.
And here's another thing. I just had two kind of interesting thoughts with that, but I guess I'll just say one of them. Well, I guess one thing that I was going to say is that when we started this podcast, we were in very similar positions. Like, we started because we both had dropped out of school. We were both artists. We both didn't know where we were going to go with that. We were both trying our best. And that's it. That's all we had, both of us. And you have gone into a very different direction than me, where I've gone into like an art history academic route, and that's my work and that's what I love. And you have gone into like a content creator, singer, songwriter, artist route, and you're independent artist, and that's what you love. And we have very different worlds now. And we both still have all this common ground, and obviously it hasn't like caused distance between us, but it's changed what the answer is for us on what we're passionate about and what we want to do. And we've been doing the podcast the whole time. So the idea of returning to form, I don't think that we can go back to who those people were, but we can maybe re-engage that excitement. But it might mean a diversity of exploration.
Yeah, we can't be like, because here's another interesting thought. There are some return to forms that are very bad, aka Eminem's Houdini.
Oh, Jesus Christ, yeah.
We don't want to do a Houdini.
That was another thing I was going to say, is I think it's hard for the artists themselves to identify what their form is.
That's true.
Like, how are you going to figure out what was your most popular moment? How do you know it hasn't happened yet?
Oh.
It might not be there yet.
Well,
your return to form might be you trying something that didn't work, that you didn't like, that's not you.
I've been thinking that a lot recently, and to answer that question that's unrelated to us, I don't know, tell me if this is true or false, but I feel like the biggest growth I've ever had as an artist was children's songs. That, like, blew everything up, was the kids' songs. And then I stopped doing kid stuff, and the growth slowed massively. Is that interesting?
Yeah.
I guess that's neither here nor there. We don't have to talk about that. Oh my God, I think that guy just threw away a pee bottle.
What the fuck?
That guy just that was a piss bottle.
He put it in the recycling bin.
I swear to God, that was a piss bottle.
That's an old guy in a nice car.
And he
There's a
peed-
porta potty right
and
there.
he peed in a bottle and then threw it in a recycling bin.
What a freak old
What
guy
a
thing to do.
sicko.
He doesn't know
Anyway.
we saw him. He doesn't know this is going on the air.
Oh yeah, I'm
Freak.
posting his license plate. 5E.
Shut up.
I'm just kidding. That isn't it.
Yeah. No,
We're-
I was gonna say though, maybe this isn't your point, but I kind of don't know if I totally agree with that. The kids album came from your other songs blowing up and people asking for kids versions.
Well, maybe kid stuff is the wrong word, but I think maybe specifically. All right, you know what I think it is? It's arts and crafts music that sounds exactly like Miss Rachel music. Like, it's as if Miss Rachel and Mr. Aaron wrote songs about arts and crafts with like ska drums, with like ska punk beats.
I think that is way too narrow of a lens. I think that's what you did and it worked, but I don't think that's why it worked.
Anyway.
I think that what you did and what people always reflect back to you is that you make music that is catchy and gets stuck in people's heads, that makes them feel seen and excited and like they have potential. And that does not have to be kids' music.
I appreciate you saying that. I think that might be true.
You don't believe me at all, I can tell.
No,
Thank you. You are
now
right.
I feel like I don't want to talk about this anymore. I want to go back to the conversation we were just having.
Okay, let's go back to it.
Yeah.
I had another point about that, but I don't remember what it was.
I think that maybe, I think the biggest feeling, I think something that's very resonated with me deeply in this conversation is the idea that trying to convert this podcast into just content and financial benefit is maybe the worst thing that ever happened to the show.
Yep. And also totally unrealistic.
Unrealistic.
Like, who the fuck are we?
And another thing too is that like I think at the time I was also desperate or really looking for a next move. Like I was like, oh, I need to like make this legit. And there was a time where I thought that this podcast could be the main thing. Like this could be the most important thing that we could possibly do. And I still think that in some ways, like I think that this is an amazing library of shit that we've made. Like it's awesome, whatever. But like, and that'll always be true. Like someone could listen to this 30 years from now and maybe think it's funny or interesting.
Yeah.
But I think that I get that same feeling from other shit now.
Yes,
like
which I'm so glad is what happened, actually.
Like the music fills that, like now I have a toxic psychopathic obsession with putting out new music.
Yeah.
Which is a private affair. which affects me negatively privately.
Somewhat private.
But and you get to
I know a lot about it too.
Yeah, and now my obsession, psychopathic obsession with content and shit has been liberated. Oh, the podcast has been liberated from that. I'm being kind of facetious.
I don't think that any of that is true.
I know, I'm just kind of fucking around. But I think maybe like this whole idea, like, oh, we should like try to make clips and make a video podcast and try to blow up the podcast. And like, honestly, maybe all that's fucking stupid.
Also, just going to reiterate something I've been saying since episode 1 4 years ago, is I don't want to blow up.
Yeah.
I'm not a content creator. I like the podcast. I like talking about art. I like interviewing artists, but I am like a writer and a behind the scenes person. Yeah. I like to make art, but I am not a content creator and I do not want to be. So I kind of don't want the podcast to blow up on video clips.
Yeah, I know.
But I also think that that's kind of interesting because when we started this, like the time that we got written up in the Boston Globe and we went and did that and like did a photo shoot for it and like it was super fun and exciting and that was the most seen we had felt at that point. I got that message from the Boston Globe reporter while I was stacking apples at my job at Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
I don't even remember if you lived in Brighton still. I don't think you did.
Yeah, I did.
You did at that point? 2021?
Well, yeah, I think so, because we did the interview in your mom's kitchen.
Oh, yeah. I thought that happened when I had moved home but still hadn't quit my job yet, so I was commuting to Trader Joe's.
No, I think...
Which was stupid. Also.
I forget. We'd have to think about it. Well, it was right at... Whatever. Never mind. But we had just interviewed Keep Kids Off the Street, which was very early.
It was after a year of the podcast, I think. Maybe it wasn't, because we started in 2021. I think the article was in 2021.
Yeah, it was early.
But what I'm trying to say is we had nothing, and we had no, like, the art world was giving us no love at that time.
No clout.
We were broke. We were, like, not recognized. We felt stupid all the time. Our families didn't think we were doing anything good. We were just kind of floating in the ether.
Yeah.
We were in shit town. So the idea that the podcast was the most exciting thing we'd ever done, like, we were in the Boston Globe the first year that we did it.
That was pretty sick.
We've never been in the Boston Globe again. It was a good beginning.
Yeah. And looking back, didn't we find out that it was like a college student doing an internship there
Was she in college?
or something, or master's program?
It was something like that.
It seemed like it was somebody wedged us in. It was almost like we got snuck in by somebody who
Yeah.
thought we were cool. That wasn't like.
That's what's up, though. I love that. But
so thank you to that person.
I think something that's very important to note, though, is that the idea that the podcast and the two of us as a unit that was going to be our careers, that would have been so corrosive and bad.
Wait, what would be corrosive and bad?
If that was our careers, if the podcast was our careers, I don't think that's what we really would have wanted, because we did grow in completely different directions. If we were doing a video podcast every day that was all content that you wanted to make, I would want to kill myself. And if I was making all the content, you would want to kill yourself. That's true. Don't even deny it.
It's interesting because I'm not going to lie. There have been episodes we've done that were mainly your world, where I felt like I just like might as well have not even been there.
And I feel like
and
that's
vice
sometimes the
versa.
episodes that you've booked, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there are some where we both feel seen, but we are completely different people, career-wise. Which is good. That's healthy, but that wasn't true when we started.
Yes.
We've developed and we've grown into like real adulthood.
Yeah.
And we're not the same fleshy entity.
And and there's a level of like feeling better than, like like we deserve more, which is an unhealthy instinct.
And that's not how we feel when we follow the thread of curiosity.
Yeah.
It does raise some problems, though, because I think the things that I'm genuinely curious and passionate about might not be the same things that you are, where it leaves... Sometimes we have that weird dynamic where it's like two people talking very engaged, like one of us and the guest, and the other person's just kind of there.
It happens sometimes, yeah.
Which raises the question of maybe we should be doing interviews solo.
I mean,
or with a guest host or something.
We've floated that before, and we both agreed that is like potentially like that would be fine. But there hasn't been an opportunity that has popped up where, like,
it feels kind of sad to do.
Well, there's never been a time where that has been more convenient.
Yeah.
Like every interview we've ever done, we're both available.
That's true.
And we both made time to do it, and it wasn't a huge deal.
Yeah, maybe that doesn't matter.
So if there is a time where, whatever, I don't know.
It would also be so much harder to interview someone alone.
It depends who.
It would be a lot more pressure.
I haven't done it in years. I used to do it every now and then. Anyway, but yeah.
I feel like it's just a different ask. Like meeting some fucking guy versus like the podcast. Like if it's the two of us with our equipment, it's like, oh, cool, we're on a show. But if it's just one person you're meeting at the library, that's like intense.
It depends. I feel like if it's a remote interview, it'd be fine. Like if it was on Zoom, that wouldn't be awkward.
Maybe.
Anyway, I think we've covered pretty much all we can cover. And I think that this is an interesting, very opposite of what I think would have been a good path forward, is that the content, success strategy, and intentions surrounding this podcast may be the very thing that's killing it.
Yeah.
Like we've accidentally given the show a disease.
A disease.
Yeah, like before it was like this healthy, innocent thing. And then we like, or me only, like I just like injected it with like poison drugs.
That's not that serious. I think it's okay.
But yeah, no, I think that I should keep the content away from this, really.
I think so too.
And just make it, we should attempt to return to form.
Yeah.
Or maybe not actually the form, but return to spirit, really.
That's a good point.
You know?
I think that something that is going to continuously happen, like we do these episodes I feel like once a year where we're like, this isn't working, I want to kill myself, what the fuck is going on, should we quit? You know?
Well,
Like,
this-
we're teasing our retirement.
I feel
But
like
it's part of the process. Like, this is always going to be something that we outgrow and then adjust and then like again.
this is our official end of year episode.
Really?
I mean, yeah, you do that every year pretty much.
We do a Christmas hiatus every year.
This is kind of our end of year episode right now. Even though we do have an interview scheduled. I'll tell you about it later.
What?
No, you remember this. We have an interview for tomorrow.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Fuck, I forgot about that.
It's okay. It'll be so easy. We'll talk about it. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do.
I mean, it's going to be a good interview. I just thought I was going to play Dungeons and Dragons with Noah tomorrow.
We can do both.
Okay, then I'm fine.
We're playing
And we'll
D&D tomorrow?
I think so.
Is that on the plan? You didn't tell me about that?
No, I definitely did.
You
But no,
are
because we were going to go to the birthday party in Plymouth, and then we were going to leave and go to Noah's.
Oh, yeah, Jalen's birthday party.
Jalen's turning 8.
Anywho.
We have to wrap his present.
Yeah. So.
See, that right there is another example of how we're different since the beginning.
Yeah,
We had no fucking commitments or time, had no family, no nothing. It's just us in the void.
Yeah.
Now we have real lives and, like, nephews.
Yeah, and kids. We don't have kids, but there's kids about out and about and around us.
Do I have nephews? I have, like, step-nephews, kind of. Is that what it...
No. I think you're Auntie Theo.
Tentative, maybe?
No, I think it's like, I think kids decide what you are.
I don't think that they understand the concept of an aunt.
Right. Like, I don't think they're like, well, you're not technically an aunt until you're married. Like, I don't think they are thinking about that. Like, if a kid, like, just starts calling you, like, Mrs. Theo.
He
like,
called me Uncle Theo the other day, too.
Oh, Reed did?
Yeah.
That's funny.
And I was like, are you Uncle Reed? And he's like, yes!
That's so fucking funny. He goes, Uncle Bry's beard. He
Yeah.
touches my beard. I go, Uncle Reed's beard. And then he touches his chin.
He loves beards, man. One time he was sleeping, taking a nap, and I just heard him through the door just saying, Uncle Bry's beard in his sleep.
What a goofy kid. He's got a good beard genes, too.
Yeah,
So
he'll have a big beard.
He'll have a Viking beard.
That's crazy,
Unless
man.
he specifically gets Huntress genes, then he'll have a patchy beard with no hair in the middle of the mustache. He'll have a disconnected mustache.
It's a naturally
and patchy beard.
curated mustache.
Yes.
You don't even have to groom it. It's just like that. It's like a Dali-esque look.
Yeah, there's a name for it. I forget. It's like a whatever.
It's very, like, Parisian of you.
Parisian? Huh. Anyway, okay. What do you say we leave this here?
I like that. This feels like a catharsis. I feel like this needed to happen.
Yeah, I didn't really think about any of this before, but yeah,
Sometimes we have an episode where we work things out on the air.
Yeah, and it's like, honestly, yeah, fuck content.
This makes me
I
feel
got enough of that.
excited again, though, because I was very dreading solving this issue, and I think that we got to the bottom of it without meaning to.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Hey, you know what might be a fun idea?
What?
Maybe we could update the intro and outro.
Oh, yeah.
That's a fun idea.
I want to re-record our closing because I hate my stupid voice saying, like...
Should we record it right now
No.
into these mics?
No, I want to do it on the big mic.
On the rail mic. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, yeah, Boston Art Podcast.
Should we overlay our new... Should we do both? Should we do the old one and the new one?
This will be our debut. Or
No.
no. This will be our final goodbye.
I want to put
of
the old
the
one
intro
and
and
then the
outro.
new one so they can compare. I think that would be funny.
I kind of want to use the same piano loop for the outro though. I feel like it's such like a sad, like it's such a nostalgic, strange little piano sound to come in right at the end, and it just gives it such an air of.
But you agree with my idea of doing
What-
two outros?
How do we?
I want to do
two?
the old one and then immediately play our new one.
No.
I think that would be funny.
Every episode.
Just on this episode. We're unveiling it.
But what if we
It's
don't?
a comparison.
All right, we'll see. If we make the new one by the time this comes out.
We're
we'll
going
do
to do it as soon as we go home.
No, we're fucking not.
Yes,
dude.
we are.
We have shit to do.
What the fuck do we have to do?
All right, whatever. All right, let's end this.
Oh, yeah, you have a show tonight
I have a show tonight.
that you don't want to talk about.
Well, what are they gonna? We'll talk
You have a
about
new
it later.
album out. Okay, fine.
Stop plugging stuff.
Shut
I
up.
love you. Hey, I'm sorry. Truce.
We invented this new thing where we had smile truce, where it was like you have to smile to truce, which is just funny. And then one of us refused to do that, so we invented frown truce, where you like can't win. Like, if you're being an asshole and you're frowning and you're mad, and then the person's like frown truce, and you frown. If you frown, that means you truce, but you don't want to truce.
So to win, you have to smile to avoid
angrily.
frown truce.
You have to angrily smile to stay mad. It doesn't work.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, longtime listeners and everybody who supported us. Another brand new era of Boston Art Podcast, 2025, baby. Let's go.
All right. Shut this up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Boston Art Podcast is an independent DIY production by Brian Huntress and Theodora Earthworms. The information contained in this episode represents the views and opinions of the original creators or our guests, and does not represent any institution, organization, or business. Find us on Instagram at Boston Art Podcast, and tune in for a new episode every Friday. Thank you for listening.
Boston Art Podcast is an independent production by Brian Huntress and Theodora Earthworms. To learn more, follow us on Instagram at Boston Art Podcast, or visit our website, bostonartpodcast.com. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts and guests, and do not represent any organizations or affiliations they may be associated with. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
Boston Art Podcast.